Hi, and welcome to this session on must-do sets for your CAT LRDI preparation. Whether you are just starting off or you're revising for the upcoming CAT examination, these are sets which you should not be missing out on. In today's session, we'll be looking at cubes and dice and roots and networks based problems. Now, these are both topics which come very sporadically in CAT. They usually appear once in 3 years or once in 4 years. Now, there is no direct theory, especially in roots and networks, but very simple visualization is required. Now, the key areas in cubes and dice based problems are cutting of cubes, coloring of cubes, numbering of dice, and a mixture of all these. You might cut it and number it, or number it and then cut it, or color it and then cut it, or color, number, and then cut it. So all these type of permutations and combinations are possible with cubes and dice. When it comes to roots and networks, they have a slightly wider variety of problems. But most of these problems involve tracing of paths, where you will be required to either find out what will be the shortest possible route in terms of expenses or in terms of time taken. And usually these questions involve optimization in one form or the other. If you are running short of time, obviously you can skip to the relevant sets. Each of the videos which we'll be releasing will have links available in the description, where if you click on it, you can skip to the relevant set. In Goa, the two main cities are Panjim and Margao. The following route map shows the time taken in minutes to travel and the cost in rupees mentioned in parentheses from Margao to Panjim. For example, to travel from Margao to Kolva, okay, it will take 30 minutes and cost 17 rupees. So this is your time and this is your cost. Cost is in rupees, time is in minutes. Right? Arrow shows the direction of traffic flow. So from Margao you can go to Kolva, then Benolim, then Kurtali, then Bamboli, and then Panjim. Similarly, you can also take Margao to Nuve, to Benoli, to Kurtali, Bamboli, and Panjim. Then Margao, Nuve, Verna, Kurtali, Bamboli, Panji. And multiple routes are available, right? And you have different travel times and different costs will be available. Nothing much to do with this, right? And if you look at the question says the amount of time taken in minutes to travel from Margao to Panji by incurring the lowest cost if there is something, so an additional condition. Bosco wants to travel from Margao to Panji in at most 90 minutes and not incur more than 85 rupees. How many ways can he complete the journey? So basically we have to look at each possible travel cost, each possible travel time. So let's first list out what are the different routes which are available. So one route will be, let's try from Margao to Kolva. Let's see how many routes are available. So you have Margao to Kolva to Benoli to Kurtali to Bamboli, then to Panji. Okay, nothing else from if you go towards Kolva. Right, next one is towards Nuve. So you have Margao to Nuve now from Nuve there is two bifurcations. So you can have Benoli or to Verna. Let's try Benoli. Now from Benoli everything is constant to Kurtali to Bamboli to Panji. Right. The other way to do it is from Nuve, you can go to Verna. Now from Verna, the only way out is Kurtali, then Bamboli, and then Panji. Okay. So we have done Nuve. Let's go to Raya. So Margao to Raya. Now from Raya, you can go to Verna or you can go to Ponda. Okay. So from Verna, there is only Kurtali, Bamboli, Panji. So Verna, Kurtali, Bamboli, Panji. The other way to go from Raya is you can go to Ponda. Now from Ponda again there are two routes, one to Bamboli and one to Ribandar. So you can go to Bamboli, so Raya to Panji, Ponda, then to Bamboli, then Panji, and then from Raya to Ponda to Ribandar to Panji. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 routes are available over here. Now I need to calculate the costs and the time taken, because for every question to be able to solve this, I need the cost and the time taken. Now we need to be a little clever. If we calculate one of the costs, the other cost can be manipulated pretty easily with this. I'll show you how. Let me just write this down a little concisely. So let's calculate the first route cost, right? The Margao, Kolwa, Benoli, Kortali, Bamboli, Panji. So you have 30 plus 12, 42, 42 plus 22, 64, 64 plus 33 will be 97. So that will be your total time. Now let's look at the cost. 17 plus 8, 25, 25 plus 17 is 42, 42 plus 19 is 61, 61 plus 15 is 76. Now I've calculated for the first route. Now once you have calculated the first cost, right? Now the succeeding costs can be done in a reasonably easy manner. Now if you look at the first two routes, right? So the only difference is Margao, Kolwa, Benoli, and here it's Margao, Nuwe, Benoli, right? How much is the change here? 30 and 12, so 42. And here it is replaced by 18 plus 15, 33. So you save 9 minutes. So 97 minus 9, 86, 88 minutes. 97 minus 9 is 88 minutes, right? How much cost is saved or changed? This increases by 6, this increases by 4. So total increase is 10. 76 plus 10 will be 86. Similarly, if I do it for the next one, now from Margao, Nuwe, Benoli, Kortali, it has gone to Margao, Nuwe, Verna, Kortali. So this will be the gap. From Nuwe, Benoli, Kortali, it has become Nuwe, Verna, Kortali, right? So here the total time is 37. Here the total time is 43. So it's a rise of 6. 88 plus 6 is 94. Similarly, here this cost is the same, whereas this cost is dropped by 8. So overall it will drop by 8. So it will become 78. 86 minus 8, 78. Similarly, I can do it for Raya, Verna and Ponda as well, right? I'm not doing this because it's pretty straightforward. It'll probably take you another 2 minutes from what I've done as of now. So you'll reach a scenario like this. I've written this down neatly. Once you've done this, each question now should be ticked off in a reasonably easy manner. Okay, so let's start. Question number 1, the amount of time taken in minutes to travel from Margao to Panji by incurring the lowest cost. I need the cost to be the lowest. So the bracket value should be the lowest. 76, 86 is higher, 78 is higher, 83 is higher, 88 is higher, 85 is higher. So this will be the value. Okay, what do you need? Amount of time taken. Time taken will be 97 minutes, right? Lowest cost is 76 rupees. Time taken is 97 minutes, right? Job done. Question number 2. If the travel has to be completed within 90 minutes, then what is the minimum cost of travel in rupees from Margao to Panji? It has to be completed within 90 minutes. So this is out, this is out, this is out, right? I need the minimum cost, So 86, 88, 85. 85 is the lowest. That will be your answer. Okay, next one. Bosco wants to travel from Margao to Panji in at most 90. So time should be less than or equal to 90 and should not incur more than 85. And the cost should be less than or equal to 85. How many ways to complete the journey? Less than equal to 90, this is out, this is out, this is out. Cost should be less than or equal to 85. This is out, this is out. Okay, only one particular route, the very last route. One should be our correct choice. And the last one, if the cost of travel time is defined as the cost incurred for every minute of travel time. So cost per travel time. So cost divided by travel time. So second value divided by the first value. How many routes have a COTT of less than 85 paise or 85%? If I take this divided by this, it should be less than 85%. Right, you can again do a rough estimate. Now, 76 by 97 will definitely satisfy. 76 by 95 is 80%. So 76 by 97 will be definitely less than 85%. Right, so this one satisfies. Okay, the second one is 85 divided by 86 divided by 88. Now, 85 divided by 100 is going to be, 85 divided by 100 is what I need, but 86 divided by 88 is going to be worse. Numerator is higher, denominator is lower. So this is out. Next one, 78 divided by 94. Again, just visually you can look at it. It'll be about 82, 83%. You can check it out. 80% of 94. 10% will be 9.4. Right. 80% will be 8 times this. So it will be 72 plus 3.2. So 73.2. Right. And 5% value would be 4.7. So definitely 77.9. 76 is less than 77.9. So third one also satisfies. First satisfies, third satisfies. Okay, what else is there? 83 by 114 definitely will satisfy. Numerator is lower, denominator is higher. So definitely less than 85%. 85 by 81 will definitely not satisfy, and 88 by 81 will not satisfy, and 85 by 86 will also not satisfy. So 1, 2, 3, 3 of these values will satisfy. You don't even need a calculator for this if you know how to quickly estimate the ratios. So it's a moderate level question, but it's a lengthy question because you will have to calculate each of these values. You have to write down the roots, then calculate each of these values, and then go and tick off one of the questions one by one. Now, it's not difficult, right? But you need to be extremely patient, especially when you're calculating the costs. See, there are two parts to it. People might mess up this part very easily. Interchanging time and cost. You need to be careful while reading the data as such. So you need to be diligent while reading it. In an exam situation, 10 to 12 minutes. But if you are patient for those 10 to 12 minutes, you can tick off 4 questions pretty straight away. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on the notifications button so that you are notified when we are releasing our next set of videos. Please do like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you want to connect with us, you can connect with us through WhatsApp and Telegram as well. All the relevant links are available in the description of this particular video. This is a set which is on cubes, but you have to solve it in 2 stages. The first stage, you'll have to figure out how the cube is numbered. And once you have figured out how the cube is numbered, then you have additional information for each particular question in order to solve this set. Okay, so let's quickly figure out how the cube is numbered and what is actually given to us. Pandara box is a large cube with faces numbered 1 to 6. 1 number on each face in such a manner that the face numbered 2 is not adjacent face numbered 6. So wherever 2 is, 6 cannot come adjacent to it. So the only way possible is if 6 is opposite it, because if you place 6 anywhere else, it is going to be adjacent to 2, right? So we know that 2 is opposite 6. 1 is not adjacent to face 5. So 1 has to be opposite 5. So it can be 1, 5 or 1, 5, right? And the remaining 2 numbers will be 3 and 4. 3 will be opposite 4. Now let's see how the cube is actually placed, right? 4 friends, Amir, Bhuvan, Chandu and David, are standing in northern, eastern, southern and western side. Okay, so you have Amir, Bhuvan, Chandu and David. So north, east, south and west. Okay, of a cubic room. The Pandara box is kept in the center of the room such that the friends can view 2 numbers. The number on the face directly in front of him and the number on the top face, right? It's an information given. The sum of these two numbers is called the pandex for a person. For example, if the number is facing Amer are 2 and 3, then the pandex number for Amer will be 2 and 3. So for example, in this case, if somebody is standing here, right, he will be able to see the front face and the top face. So suppose this is 5, right? So his pandex number will be 2 plus 5, 7. Whereas say suppose 3 is here, right? The person standing here, 3, for him the pandex number will be 3 plus 5, 8. For the person standing here, his pandex number will be 6 plus 5, 11. So we know this part. Okay, let's proceed further. It is observed that when the Pandara box is kept in a manner says that none of the friends can see the face with the number 5 on it. So which means 5 is kept on the bottom, which means 1 is on the top. Then the pandex number for Amer and Bhuvan are 4 and 3 respectively. So for Amer, the pandex number is 4, and for Bhuvan, the pandex number is 3. Now, for who, in this case, who will have pandex number 3? The person standing straight here. So this is Bhuvan. His pandex number will be 2 plus 1, 3. Right, which means one side is, it says Amer will have a pandex number of 4. So if you go here, this side will be Amer. You go clockwise, you get Amer, Bhuvan, Chandu and David. So from Bhuvan to Amer, you'll have to go anti-clockwise. Anti-clockwise, you will reach Amer. Amer has a pandex number of 4. The top number is 1. So the front number will be 3. Opposite that will be 4. Right. So we know the orientation of the cube also, how the cube is actually constructed. 1, 2, 5, 6 and 3 and 4 opposite each other. So this is the orientation of the cube. Right. Once we have this, let's go to the questions one by one and try to solve them. Okay. Question number 1 says the Pandara box is kept in such a manner that nobody can see the face number 3. I have placed it already here. Bhuvan has a pandex number of 10. Bhuvan has a pandex number of 10. So top is 4. So 10 will be when Bhuvan faces 6. Now, if Bhuvan is facing 6, to go Amer to Bhuvan is clockwise. So Bhuvan to Amer will be anti-clockwise. So this will be Amer. Opposite Bhuvan is David. And opposite Amer is Chandu. Okay. So Chandu is facing 1, David is facing 2. The question is, what will be the pandex number for Chandu? For Chandu, the pandex number will be 1 plus 4, 5. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Question number 2. The Pandara box is placed in such a manner that nobody can see the face number 3. So again, 3 is at the bottom. The face number 6 is directly in front of Bhuvan. Okay, so this is Bhuvan. So which means this is Amer, this is Chandu, and this is David. Okay, so this is nice. Okay, Chandu moves the Pandara box in such a way that the face number 6 is still in front of Bhuvan. Okay. But the pandex number of Bhuvan has changed. Okay, so 6 will be there, right? But the pandex number changes, which means 4 is no longer on the top, which means you will rotate it like this. So either on top you will have 1, 3 or 5 coming in. 4 cannot be on top. It has to be either 1, 3 or 5. 2 also cannot come, because if 2 comes on top, then 6 will go to the bottom and Bhuvan's face number will change, right? So you're going to rotate it like this. Now the question is, which of the following faces is directly in front of Chandu? Now, you know 4 cannot be on top anymore and 2 cannot be on top. 2 has to be placed over here. So Chandu can never face 2. Chandu can never face 2. So this is out. So this option is out. Okay, Chandu cannot face 2, because if Chandu faces 2, then the number opposite Bhuvan is going to change. Right. What else cannot happen? 4 cannot stay on top, which means Chandu cannot be facing 1 also. If Chandu keeps on facing 1 and Bhuvan is facing 6, then the cube's orientation is fixed. Right. So 4 will still be on top. And if 4 is still on top, then Bhuvan's pandex number will not change. Right. So even 1 cannot be faced by Chandu. Right. So the other 3 numbers are possible. Chandu can face 3, Chandu can face 4, Chandu can face 5. So 1, 3 and 5. Option D will be your correct choice. Now question 3 and question 4 have the same initial information. Okay, so let's see what it says. The Pandara box is placed in such a way that nobody can see the face numbered 2. So 2 is at the bottom. Right? And the Pandex number for Amer is the maximum possible. Now, maximum possible Pandex number is 6 plus 5, 11. If 2 is at the bottom, maximum number is 6 will be on the top, and the maximum possible will be when Amer faces 5. If Amer faces 5, this will be this. So this will be Bhuvan, this will be Chandu, this will be David. Right? So we know the orientation of the cube as it is given to us. Okay, now let's see what the rest of the question state. Starting from Amer in the clockwise direction, each friend flipped the box in such a way that the face on top of the box and the face at the bottom of the box are swapped, while ensuring that the number on the face he faces does not change. Okay, so Amer will make sure, you'll start with Amer. He will flip it in such a way that 2 goes to 6, 6 takes the place of 2. Right, but 5 remains where it is. He still has to place face 5. Now, if that is going to happen, 5, 1, if 6 goes at the bottom and 2 comes to the top, right, you have to rotate it clockwise, right? So which means 4 will come at the back, and sorry, which means 3 will come at the back and 4 will come onto front. That's the only way to change it, because you cannot change anything else. 1 has to stay where it is, 5 has to change it. The only way 2 can come on top is when you rotate the entire cube in such a way that everything will go, this entire set will go 2 places, right? So 4 will take the place of 3, 3 will take the place of 4, 6 and 2 will interchange their places, 5 and 1 will stay the same, right? So this is what is happening, and everyone keeps on doing it. Okay, the question says, what will be the Pandex number for Chandu after Bhuvan flips the box for the first time? Now, this is what Bhuvan faces. Now, Bhuvan will face 4 now instead of 3. Bhuvan will now face 4. Bhuvan will do the same thing. He will keep the 4 in front, 3 at the back, but he will make sure that 2 goes to bottom and 6 goes to top, which means 5 and 1 will now interchange places. 5 and 1 will interchange places. So 5 will come here, 1 will come here, 6 will go on top, 2 will go to the bottom, 4 will stay where it is, 3 will stay where it is. This is the cube which is given, which Chandu has to work with. Now the question is, what will be the Pandex number for Chandu? Pandex number for Chandu now, before he flips, after Bhuvan flips, before Chandu gets his turn, is basically 5 plus 6. 5 plus 6 is 11. And question number 4 says, starting from Amer in clockwise direction, each person flipped, blah, 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 the same thing. What will be the Pandex number of Bhuvan after David flips for the first time? So we have done Amer flipping, Bhuvan flipping. The question is, what will be the Pandex number for Bhuvan after David flips? So we have to go till David. So next in turn will be Chandu. Chandu will flip next. So when Chandu flips, 5 and 1 will be in the same place. But 4, 3 and 6, 2 will interchange positions. So 2 will come on top, 6 will come on bottom, 3 will come to front, and 4 will go to the back, right? This is the cube that David has to work with. Now when David flips, 4 will stay in the same place, 3 will come to the front, 6 and 2 will interchange the spots, and 5 and 1 will interchange their spots. Right, the question is, what will be the Pandex number for Chandu? Sorry, what will be the Pandex number for Bhuvan after David flips? Okay, so Amer is here, Bhuvan is here. Bhuvan will face 3 and the top is 6. So 3 plus 6 will be 9. 9 will be your correct answer. Okay, so this is a pretty nice set as such. I mean, it's a as I said, it's a set which has to be done in 2 stages. First, you have to figure out how the box is, I mean, which face is against which face. Then you have to figure out the orientation of the box. Then you have a Pandex number which is given to you. And then you have to keep on rotating them based on different value. It's a moderate to slightly difficult set. You need to be extremely patient, extremely careful. It is not difficult because of a lot of data. It is difficult because you have to visualize the cube, and cubes usually are slightly difficult. Most people find a little bit of difficulty while visualizing cubes sort of questions. A lot of students miss out on good B schools because they simply don't apply and they are ignorant. They don't do any research beyond the IIMs, and they are more worried about their profile and academics, etc., rather than actually getting into a good B schools and making a career in the management field. If you would like personalized B school assistance, all you need to do is fill up the Google document. Link is available in the description of this video, and we'll send you individual B school recommendations which fit your profile and your career aspirations. This is a set which came up in CAT 2003, the leaked paper which was repeated again. This is the only time in the history of CAT that a paper was leaked. This was the paper which was set after the paper was leaked, right? So this is the repeat paper. So it is actually a very meta sort of set if you were to read it up. I mean, it refers itself and how the investigation was actually carried out, about how the people were caught. The questions, there are 5 questions at the end of it. Most of them seem to be like, properly determinable sort of a question. Let's see what the set says. Recently, the answers of a test held nationwide were leaked to a group of unscrupulous people. As I said, very self-referencing sort of a set. The investigative agency has arrested the mastermind and 9 other people, A to I, in this matter. Interrogating them, the following facts have been obtained regarding their operation. Initially, the mastermind obtains a correct answer key. Okay, so he has a leaked paper. Okay, all the others create the answer keys in the following manner. Okay, they obtain the answer key from one or more people who already possess the same. These people are called his or her sources. Okay, if the person has 2 sources, then he or she compares the answer key obtained from both the sources. If the key to the question is from both the sources identical, it is copied, otherwise it is left blank. If the person has only one source, he or she copies the source's answers completely to his or her copy. Finally, each person compulsorily replaces one of the answers, not a blank one, with a wrong answer in his or her answer key. The paper contained 200 questions, so the investigative agency has ruled out the possibility of 2 or more of them introducing wrong answers in the same question. Okay, let's see what this particular part says. Okay, so first you will obtain your key from the mastermind. Okay, let's look at the first level of people. These are the people who would obtain it directly from the mastermind. So let's call them X and Y. Right, now they have the entire answer key correctly. Right. Okay, so what they will do is they will take the answers, right, and leave one of the answers wrong. They will change one of the answers to a wrong one. So suppose I take answer 50 and X will mark it 50 as wrong. Y will say mark answer 70 as wrong. Okay, remaining all 199 answers will be correct. Right, now if somebody takes a key from X, so somebody has X as a source, let's call him say P. What he will do is he will already have 50 as a wrong answer, right? So he does not know 50 is a wrong answer. He basically trusts X. He will mark everything what X has marked, and he will choose one question. And mark it wrong compared to what X has marked. Now, the investigative agency is assuming that given that there are so many questions, X's 50, which was wrong, will be copied by P, and P will take some other question and mark it as a wrong answer. Let's say assuming question 35, P marks as Okay. Now, what happens in the second scenario? When you borrow from two sources, suppose somebody borrows from X and Y, both. Let's call him Q. If somebody borrows from X and Y both, right, he will have a mismatch for question number 50. He will have mismatch for question number 70. Because X has marked 50 wrong and Y would have marked it right. Whereas Y would have marked 70 wrong and X would have marked it right. So the answer keys for question number 50 and question number 70 will not match. 50 and 70 will not match. So what will he do? So Q will leave 50 blank, 70 blank. He will leave 50 blank and 70 blank. And then he will choose one of the remaining questions. Say, let's say question 105. And he'll mark it wrong. He will mark it wrong. Right. Now, if somebody borrows from Q, let's call this R. He would have two blanks already. 50 and 70 will be blank. Right. His 105th answer is wrong already. But he has to introduce one more wrong answer. So let's say he will introduce 42 as wrong answer. Right. So this is how the chain progresses of wrong answers and right answers. This is how the chain progresses. Now you have to look at this chain and figure out who is the source, who has two sources, who introduced which question wrong, which question right, and so on. Okay, I have summarized this information. Let's see. Now, as we discussed, right, every time you get it from multiple sources, you will have blank answers being introduced. That's the only time you get blank answers introduced. Otherwise, you will just mark one or more questions wrong, right? So now, if you look at A has only one wrong answer. He has no blanks, right? Which means A got it from only one source. Because he does not have any blank answers, A should have gotten it from only one source. And given that he has only one wrong answer, there are no other wrong answers, A would have gotten it directly from the mastermind. A would have gotten it directly from the mastermind. Right? Because if A took it from somebody else, say P to A, right? P would have entered one wrong answer. Right? A would have copied even the wrong answer and he would have introduced another wrong answer. So A would have had two wrong answers, not one wrong answer. So A basically got it directly from the mastermind. Right? Similarly, you can also say D also got it directly from the mastermind. And you can also say G also got directly from the mastermind because he's got only one answer wrong. One answer wrong and no blanks. Right? So these are the three people who got it from the masterminds. Now, everything else will be introduced. All the errors will be flowing through these three people. Now, A has introduced 46 as a wrong answer. Now, if somebody takes from A only, right, his question number 46 will have a wrong answer. And if he takes only from A, he will not have any blank answers, but he will have another wrong answer besides 46. So if you observe E is that person, right? E basically took from A, copied everything, even the wrong answer 46, right? And marked 90 as his wrong answer. So E would have taken from A and E introduced 90, A introduced 46. Okay, so I've taken care of E. Anyone else I can look at? Okay, H. H is also similar case. He has no blank answers and he has got two wrong answers, which means A also gave to H and H introduced 92 as the wrong answer. Okay, so this is nice. This is nicely progressing over here. Now we can actually trace this 46 and see who took it from who. Okay, anywhere else you have 46? You have 46. Okay, you have 46 here. You have, okay, now I've exhausted all the blanks. Okay, now I've exhausted all the blanks. Okay, now I'll have to work with the blank answers. Okay, let's see where you have. Okay, F should be easy to match. F should be easy to match. Why? Because F has both 92 and 90 as blank answers, right? We know E introduced 90 as the wrong answer. H introduced 92 as the wrong answer. So if somebody takes from E and H, right? Their answer key to E, to 90 will not match. To answer 92 will not match. So they will have to mark it blank. Right. Further, 46 will match because both of them took from A, assuming that A got everything right. They introduced their own wrong answers. They copied A's wrong answer. Right. So 46 will match. And he will introduce 14 as the wrong answer. So F introduces 14 as the wrong answer and he takes it from G as well, E as well as H. So this is also done. Working out nicely now. Okay, can we figure out with I? With I, even 17 is missing. 17, 46 and 90 are blank. Okay, when will this happen? Okay, 17 is introduced by D. So, but because he has a blank, he has multiple sources. So even 46 and 90. Who has 46 and 90 wrong? Okay, E. 46 and 90 wrong. Okay. So if you look at I, how would have I made his answer key? I would have taken from D as well as E, right? His answer to question number 17 will not match. Why? Because D deliberately introduced 17 as a wrong answer. E copied from A and A has copied answer to 17 correctly and E has introduced a different question. 90 as a wrong answer, right? So E's answer will be the actual correct answer, but it will not match with D. So I will have to leave 17 blank. Similarly, I will also have to leave 46 and 90 blank. 46 and 90 blank. Why? Because E has two wrong answers. 46 through A and 90 on his own, right? So those answers will be different than what D has marked because D has got only one wrong answer. So when I compares with E and D, right, those three answer keys won't match. So all three of them should be left blank by I, and I introduces 27 as his wrong answer. So I is also done. Okay. Now you're left with B and C. Now, if you compare C's blank answers with I's blank answers, both of them have the same blank answer, 17, 46, 90. Both of them have one wrong answer common, which is 27. And C has basically introduced one wrong. So if somebody C takes from I, he would have these three blank. So you would have to make this blank. He would assume 56, question number 27 is the correct answer here. I has marked 27 right, so he will mark 27 what I has marked, which is actually the wrong answer. And then he'll introduce his own wrong answer, which is question number 56. So we can clearly infer that C borrowed from, or C took it from I. Now, the last person left is B. Now, B has a 25 in it. 25 was introduced by G. So B will be, one of the sources for B will be G. Okay. Now whoever he compares with, G has introduced 25. Whoever B compares with will not match. Nobody else has 25 wrong, right? So, but because it is a blank, he has to have some other source also. Which other are not matching? 46 and 90. Who has 46 and 90 wrong? E. E has 46 and 90 wrong, right? So that will transmit through to B. This will transmit through to B. So when B compares 46 and 90 with G's answer key, those will not match. So we'll have to leave it blank. When he compares 25 with E's answer key, that will not match. He will have to leave that blank. And then B introduces one more of his wrong answer, which is 96. So we can clearly say B took it from E. Right? So we have figured out the entire chain. We have traced everyone's sources. We can now answer the question one by one. Let's do it. Who among the following must have two sources? A got it directly from the mastermind, so not A. B has two sources. We can verify the others. C has only one source, which is I. So this is out. D has only the mastermind as a source. This is out. So option B will be your correct choice. Question number 2. How many people, excluding the mastermind, needed to make the answer key before C? So before C can make, how many people will have to make? Now, for C to get the answer key, you need I. That's one person. For I to get the answer key, you need to have E making the answer key, D making the answer key. Plus, for E to make the answer key, A has to make the answer key. So there are 4 people who need to complete their answer key. So if these 4 people make their answer key, then basically C can mark his answer. So option 3 will be your correct choice. Question number 3. G and H were sources to who? G and H were sources to who? G is a source only to B, right? But H is not a source to B. So none of these. Both of them are not common sources to anyone, right? They are sources to individual other people, but they are not common sources to anyone. So option 4 will be your correct choice. Question number 4. Which of the following is true? C introduced wrong answer to 27. 27 was actually introduced by I. So this is out. E introduced wrong answer to 46. Actually A introduced. So this is out. F introduced wrong answer to question 14. F introduced to question 14. This is definitely correct. Option 3. This is also false. H introduced to 46. Actually A introduced to 46. So option 3 for question number 4. And the last one. Which among the following two groups had identical sources? A, D, G. A, D, G, all 3 got it from the mastermind. So they had identical sources. So first is correct. Option 3 is out. Option 2 is out. E and H. E and H both have A as a source. That is also correct. 2 is also correct. Option 4 will be your correct choice. It's a brilliant question. You require, tracing of all the, sources in this cases. You need to see how the wrong answer transmits through the entire system. We have to work it out one by one. It will take you about 12 to 13 minutes in an exam situation. It's not an easy question by any stretch. And when it first came, it actually, a lot of people were really scared. It's a very special question to me, extra special because I think it's one of the most wonderful questions that CAT has ever made. It has made a question out of what actually happened to itself. So it's almost like, a self-referencing sort of a recursive sort of a question. Please do try it whenever you're practicing for your final CAT examination. If you get stuck anywhere with respect to preparing for LRDI, there are some free resources which are available on our YouTube channel. We have a playlist on how to prepare for LRDI. It includes which are the topics which you need to focus on, how much do you need to spend on each area. Also, we tell you how to go about picking sets in the examination, right? So if you are not able to pick even a single set, this is a good framework to start with and build on for your CAT LRDI preparation. If you want any further assistance in terms of speaking with us, getting personal guidance, doing more practice, following a more structured path to LRDI preparation, please do look at our Ultimate LRDI course. 216 small, identical and unpainted cubes are arranged to form a large 6x6x cube. All the 6 faces of a large cube are painted blue. Now a 4x4x4 cube comprising of 64 small cubes is removed from one of the corners of the large cube. This 4x4x4 cube is now painted red on all the 6 faces, while all the 3 surfaces of the large exposed cube, due to the removal of 4x4x4, are painted white. Then the 4x4x4 cube is put back in its original position in the large cube, and the large cube is finally painted green on all the 6 faces. right? And once you have done, the questions are what is the small number of cubes with exactly 3 faces painted? What is the number of small cubes with exactly 1 face painted? What is the number of small cubes with no face painted? And what is the number of small cubes which have exactly 1 face painted white and exactly 1 face painted green? Okay, so let's understand the process. So you have 216 identical unpainted cubes, right? So you have 6 cross 6 cross 6. Okay, all the 6 faces of the large cube are painted blue. All right, we painted it blue. Okay, now a 4 cross 4 cross 4 cube comprising 64 smaller cubes is removed from one of the corners of the large cube. Okay, so from one of the corners you remove a 4 cross 4 cross 4. Okay, so I've removed this out. Right. Now this 4 cross 4 cross 4 cube is now painted red on all the 6 faces. Okay, it's painted red on all the 6 faces, while the 3 surface of the large cube exposed due to the removal of 4 cross 4 cross 4 are painted white. Okay, these are painted white. Now I've also painted the external surfaces here. These surfaces won't be painted white. Right, these surfaces won't be painted white. Right, I've just put it to so that I can identify the cube, because if I just put the surface as white, we may not be able to identify it easily. So these are not painted white. Okay, just as a reference, only the exposed surfaces, these surfaces are painted white. Okay. Then the 4 cross 4 cross 4 cube is put back to its original position, and the large cube is finally painted green. So you put this back, form the original cube again, and then paint it green. So something like this. This is how it will look like. Okay. Basically, we have visualized what is the process. Let's go to the questions one by one and solve them. Question number 1. What is the number of small cubes with exactly 3 faces painted? Now, one thing to remember in this question is that basically the moment you paint a cube, you paint a face, it cannot be unpainted again, right? So it will retain the paint. The paint color might change, but once you put a paint on it, you're not removing that paint, right? So you will not lose your paint as such. Now, if I were to just take the large cube analogy, right, 3 faces painted will come up only at the corners, right? 3 faces will come only at the corners, that is 8. That is pretty easy to calculate. But here, it is not just the cube. You open it up, paint it again, and then put it back, right? So when you put the cube back onto the original large cube again, and then paint it, you are not going to get any additional painted surfaces, right? Because the number of surfaces exposed here is going to be lesser than the number of surfaces exposed versus these two, because this surface will no longer be painted. It will come up here, it will no longer be painted, right? So we need to figure out from these two figures, what are which are the places where 3 faces are exposed. Now this is a cube, so you will obviously have 8 faces from here, 8 pieces from here. So 8 pieces will be here. Okay. Now what about the remaining part? Now remaining part, there are some corners from the large cube which are still part of it. Only one corner is used up. Only this corner is common between the large cube and the smaller 4 cross 4 cross 4 cube, right? So this corner is counted here, but the other 7 are not counted. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 at the back. So plus 7 more, right? Any other cubes which have corners exposed? Yes. If you look at this cube, this has 3 faces exposed. This cube will have 3 faces exposed. This cube will have 3 faces exposed. So another 3. So 8 plus 7, 15, 15 plus 3, 18 will be your correct choice. 18 will be your correct answer. Question number 2. What is the number of small cubes with exactly 1 face painted? Okay, now 1 face painted is basically a face cube. Right. Now, if it was a large cube, all I would do is count the number of face cubes in one face and basically multiply it by 6. Right. But the problem is, again, as we discussed, once you paint a surface, you cannot unpaint the surface. Right. So if you look at this cube, right, this is going to be a face cube in the large cube. This cube and this cube are the same cube. Right. But because it is a smaller cube and it gets painted, this is actually a corner cube of a small cube. Right. So it will have 3 exposed faces painted, and even when you put it back in, it will have 2 faces which will still have a red on it. The face here and the face here. It will still have red faces. So it will not have just one face painted, it will still have 3 faces painted. It will have 1 green and 2 reds. Right? The exposed face is now green, but it still has 3 faces painted red. So you cannot just do a simple calculation like that. Okay, so let's break this down and look at it in parts, just like we did in the first one. Okay, now for the smaller cube, right, this will be a one face. All the face cubes here will either get painted green, right, like for example these 4 faces will get painted green here. Right. On the other hand, there will be 4 face cubes like this on the left face. They will stick inside, they will not get painted over, but they will still have one face painted. Right. So you'll have to count those. So first let's count the face cubes here. 4 on 1. So from a 4 cross 4, it becomes a 2 cross 2. So 4 pieces on one face into 6 faces of the small cube. So there are 24 pieces. Right, so we've taken care of this. Now let's look at the large one. Now in the large one, you still have 3 faces which still remain intact. The left face, the bottom face and the back face. They still remain intact. Right, all of them will have a 4 cross 4, which is 16, a square of 16 will have only one face exposed. How many such faces? 1, 2, 3 into 3. That's 48. Now, anything else? Now comes the slightly trickier part. Now, if you look at this piece right here, this piece remains a face piece throughout. It's a face piece here, it's a face piece here as well. Right? It's the same piece. Right? It will have just one face exposed, right? And basically it will just get painted once. How many such pieces? 1, 2, 3, or you can just use a symmetry, 3 broken faces. So 3 into 1, that will be 3. Anything else? Yes, there is more left. Right, now if you look at this exposed surface, right, this will have the top face painted blue. We said that we are just using it to mark, and this face will be painted white. When you put this cube back on top of it, this face will continue to remain white, but the top face will get painted green. Right. But the row below it, if you look at these pieces, right, right, these 9 pieces will remain protected. They will have only one face exposed and they will get painted with white. And when you put the large cube back in, those 9 faces will still remain white. How many such pieces will be there? 9 on one exposed face, 9 on the second exposed face, and 9 on the third exposed face. So 3 into 9, that will be 27. Right? So we have accounted for all these pieces. Let's add them up. Right? So that is 20, 30, 78, 9, 102. 102 will be your correct answer. Question number 3. What is the number of small cubes with no face painted? Small cubes with no face painted. Again, because of the problem, if it was a large cube, we would have directly done from a 6 cross 6 cross 6, it will become a 4 cross 4 cross 4, and my job is done. Right? Unfortunately, the cube is broken, and this piece ideally would not have had any color on it, but it has now white on it. Right? So you'll have to discount those pieces. Okay, instead of that, let's count the pieces. Now, in this smaller cube, which is a 4 cross 4 cross 4, the core will still remain the same. So from a 4 cross 4 cross 4, it will become a 2 cross 2 cross 2. So 8 pieces here will have one face will have no faces painted and they will remain protected. What else do we have here? Okay, now if you look at this column, right? Or let's look at this column. Right. Ideally, this entire column should have been unpainted. Below this, except for the top layer, the entire layer would have been unpainted. But this layer is painted, but there is a cube which is adjoining these two. Right? There's a cube which is adjoining these two. Right? That remains unpainted, and that is a core cube of the large cube itself. Right? That's a core cube of the large cube itself. So that column will remain unpainted. How many such there? 1, 2, 3. How many such situations like this? 1 here, and 1 here. So 3 into 3, that will be 9. Anything else we are missing? Yes, we are missing one more thing. Now there will be a cube which will be at the intersection of all these three columns, or all these three stacks. Right? So there will be a vertical stack, there will be a horizontal stack, and there will be a depth stack. Right, so we have counted 3 here, we have counted 3 here, we have counted 3 here, but there is one at the intersection of all 3, 1 which we have not counted. So you need to count that one back. Add this up, 10 plus 8, 18 will be your correct choice. Question number 4. What is the number of small cubes that have exactly one face painted white and exactly one face painted green? Now, they should have one face painted white, one face painted green. Again, we'll go back to the same principle. Once you paint a set of cubes, you will basically not have any, you cannot unpaint it. Right? So you have one face painted white, one face painted green, which means the exposed cube should be on the edge. It should have 2 faces exposed. Now, if you go back to the second question, we did this again, right? Only we were looking at just one face is exposed, right? So in this question, we are looking at 2 faces exposed. Now, if you have 2 faces, if you look at this cube, right? This will be the cube here. This will be this cube, right? Now, the front face is white, the top face is green, right? So it satisfies how many such pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 on one face, because these are all have only one face painted white, right? So these 6 will have one face painted white and the other exposed. So the white will remain and it will get painted over. Now what about this cube? Now this cube will have one face painted white, but it will have 2 faces exposed. Right? Both of them will end up becoming green. This is this piece. Right? So you don't have to count this. Right? So on one exposed surface, you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 on one exposed surface. Using the symmetry, 3 exposed surfaces, 18 such pieces. This is a beautiful question. I mean, like, the thing is, the amount of information given is so small, but you have to deconstruct how the cube is actually being done, right? You have to paint it individually and then figure it out on a question by question basis, which faces are painted, how many faces will be exposed. Key point here was basically understanding that once you expose a face and it gets painted, you cannot unpaint it, right? And you still have to figure out the basic concepts of a cube, like where you will find 2 faces painted, or 3 faces painted, or 1 face painted, or none of the faces painted. In an exam situation, it will take you upwards of 10 to 11 minutes. It's a difficult question, and you will probably have to draw both these diagrams in order to be able to solve this in a neater manner in the examination. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on the notifications button so that you are notified when we are releasing our next set of videos. Please do like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you want to connect with us, you can connect with us through WhatsApp and Telegram as well. All the relevant links are available in the description of this particular video. Hi, this is a very interesting question on paths, networks, etc. It's not difficult, moderate level question. Just need to be careful about the diagram and stuff. Let's see what this says. The figure below shows a street map of a certain region with road intersections A through L. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. These are the street intersection. A person standing at an intersection can see along the straight lines that are in his or her line of sight, and all other people at these intersections. For example, a person standing at G can see B, can see C, can see E, okay, through this, F, H, K, right? In particular, the person standing at G can see the person standing at E irrespective whether there's a person at intersecting F or not. So G can see F or E irrespective whether it is there or not. Okay, and then you have some information. 6 people are standing, right? No 2 people are standing in the same intersection, and so on. And the questions are: who is standing, who can see V, what is the minimum number, what should a new person be standing at D. Okay, so there is no person standing at D, right? That's a 6th statement. Okay, so let's try to fit these things and see what comes out. So there is nobody standing at D. Okay, so that is out. Okay, so U, V, W, X, Y, Z, these are 6 people. X, U, Z are standing in 3 corners of a triangle formed by the street segments. So they can be BFG or BCG. So you have X, U, and Z. X can see only U and Z. Okay. Y can see only U and W. So Y and somebody W, right? U sees V standing in the next intersection behind Z. So after Z, there is V. Okay. W cannot see V or Z. So they should be on opposite sides. Okay. So this is roughly the part. Okay. So let's see where we can fit U, because U has the maximum information. If I fit U here, right, you need Z and V. So this will be Z, this will be V, right? So X, U, and Z. So X will come here, right? Where will W, Y will come here, but to fit W, right, then W will be equal to say Z, right, which is going to be out. So I cannot fit U here, right? So U cannot be fitted here, right? If I fit U here, then there'll be a problem. If you have Z, V, this is X, right? Where will I fit? There is no place to fit Y, because U has to see Y. There is no place left. So U cannot be fitted here also. Okay, where else can I fit U? If I fit U here, you can have Z and V. This looks promising. This looks promising. Okay, let's check this one. If I fit U here, this will be Z and V. U has to see W. Has to see Y. Y has to see W. And then you'll have X here. This is possible. W cannot see V or Z. Right? This is possible. This is possible. But then X will be able to see Y. But then X will be able to see Y. If I put Y here, Y will be able to see Z and V. Right? So this is also not possible. So the previous one, which we had said was promising, that is the one. So if I put U here, this is X, this is Z. Okay, V will be here. Y can see only U and W. So you'll have Y here and W will come here. Right, W will come here. This is the final arrangement. W cannot see V or Z. Right, X can see only Z and U. Right, yeah, this is the final arrangement. Right, let's go to the questions and try to solve them. Right, I've fitted this nicely. There is nobody at D. Okay, who is standing at intersection A? At intersection A, there is nobody. Option 1. Who can V see? V can see Z and U. Option 3. What is the minimum number of street segments that X must cross to reach Y? To reach y, x will have to cross this segment as well as this segment. So minimum is 2. Option A. And the last one, what should a new person stand at intersection D? So let's call it Mr. P. Who among the 6 would he be able to see? He will be able to see X. He will be able to see W. X and W. Option 1. Right? Pretty straightforward set. Right? You just have to figure out where to fit U. Once you figure that out, the question can be solved very easily. About 5 to 6 minutes in an actual exam situation. That completes this one. That completes this session on must-do sets for CAT LRDI preparation. Please do let us know in the comments below how you like this. Please do share this with your friends who are preparing for CAT and other MBA entrance examinations. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn, or you can connect with us on WhatsApp and Telegram groups. The links are all available in the description of this particular video. If you're facing any problem with CAT LRDI sets, you can look at our YouTube channel playlist on how to prepare for CAT LRDI. If you want any specialized, personalized attention on LRDI preparation in the most structured manner, you can also look at our Ultimate LRDI course. This is the most comprehensive course which is available in the market. Till we meet again the next time, goodbye and all the best.